Welcome to Diamonds and Dumpster Fires, the show where we talk about finding strength when life falls apart. I'm your host, Melie, and around here, resilience isn't perfection. It's falling flat, getting back up, and maybe laughing about it later. From breakups to breakthroughs, we mix faith, neuroscience, and a little sass to help you rebuild a life that actually feels like yours. Are you ready? Let's go. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of Diamonds in Dumpster Fires. Before we dive into this week's topic, I just want to remind you that starting this month, February 2026, Diamonds and Dumpster Fires is moving to a twice-a-month cadence. So new episodes will come out on the first and third Wednesdays of every month. So let's dive into it. Today's topic is when something quietly hurts. Resilience, dopamine, and the wisdom of letting go. So there is this part of resilience that I believe no one really prepares you for. We talk a lot about pushing through. We talk a lot about, the myth of bouncing back and what that actually looks like. We talk a lot about surviving obvious hard things. But there is another moment that is much, much quieter. It's not when there's a crisis. It's not necessarily a breakdown. It's not even that moment where you say, you know what, I can't do this anymore. It's the moment when you realize that something in your life is quietly hurting you. It might not even be in a dramatic way. It might not even be in a way that makes for a good story, but it is this slow nervous system way. And that can be surprisingly hard to name because when something is clearly harmful for you, walking away feels justified. It's like this obvious choice, right? But when the harm is more subtle, we can start second-guessing ourselves. We might tell ourselves, you know what, it's really not that bad, or other people handle this just fine. Maybe I'm just being too sensitive. Maybe this is just what growth feels like. But resilience doesn't usually announce itself loudly. It often will show up as this kind of internal friction. Maybe it's a heaviness that you can't quite explain, a sense that your body is tired before your mind actually wants to admit why. And that is the kind of resilience that we will be talking about today. It's the kind that starts in the body before you can actually justify it or explain it, before it actually makes sense. So this episode is about what real resilience actually feels like in the nervous system, how dopamine-driven habits can quietly erode our sense of safety, and why letting go is sometimes the most regulated, self-trusting decision that you can make. And yes, I will give you a personal example here because this showed up for me very recently with the dating apps. But this isn't really about dating. It's about noticing when something is costing you your peace. We often will talk about resilience like it's just a mindset issue, like if you could just reframe something or stay positive longer or push through discomfort with a little bit more skill, maybe then you would feel more resilient. But resilience is physiological before it's ever psychological. Your nervous system makes decisions long before your thoughts actually catch up. So your nervous system is constantly asking, am I safe? Do I need to stay alert? Is it okay to rest? And then based on those answers, you might feel either settled or on edge, curious or overwhelmed, motivated or shut down. Resilience isn't about character or toughness, it's about capacity. And here is something that often surprises a lot of people. A resilient nervous system doesn't actually feel intense. It feels steady. And if you've lived through prolonged stress or trauma or loss or uncertainty, steadiness can feel really unfamiliar. Sometimes it even feels uncomfortable. This is why some people can feel restless when their life finally slows down. Their body is used to urgency. But resilience isn't about excitement, it's about safety. And safety can feel boring at first. One of the most common things that I've heard with regards to this is, I don't feel like myself anymore. I feel a little flat. I don't feel motivated. And the assumption here is that something has potentially gone wrong. But sometimes what's actually happening is a recalibration. So if your baseline has been stress, emotional intensity, constant stimulation, regulation can feel a little like loss. Your brain is used to so much noise, so when things quiet down, it doesn't always interpret that as peace. Sometimes it interprets the calm as danger. And this matters because many of our habits aren't actually about joy or connection. They are about recreating stimulation, not because it nourishes us, but because it's familiar, which brings us to dopamine. I think dopamine is really misunderstood because a lot of people think of it as the happiness chemical, but that is not what it actually is. It's the anticipation chemical. So dopamine rises when something might happen, when there's novelty, maybe when there's uncertainty, when there's a potential reward. That is the exact reason why scrolling will hook us, why refreshing the apps all the time feels compulsive, and it is the absolute reason why swiping on dating apps keeps us engaged even when we're exhausted. In fact, the dating app manufacturers are banking on this. So your brain will keep asking, what if? What's next? Maybe this time I'll meet the perfect person. I can't think of actually a system better than dating apps for explaining how this works. If you have not ever tried dating apps, I'll give you a little rundown on how it works. So you make a profile, you add your photos, you do some prompts, and then it starts showing you people. You can add filters so that, you see people of, certain age, location, whatever, and you just swipe on through. So you swipe right when you like somebody, left when you don't like them. And it creates this rhythm of constantly checking and waiting and hoping. You swipe right on somebody that you like and you're hoping that they're going to swipe back, and that anticipation of, ooh, if I open the app, will I find that I have been liked back by this person, or will somebody new have found me? And the harm here is actually more than rejection. It's unresolved seeking. That intermittent reinforcement, rewards that arrive unpredictably, is the most powerful driver of dopamine. So over time, this will train your nervous system to stay in this state of anticipation and disappointment. You're not devastated necessarily, but it's just enough to keep you looking for more. So over time, that will lead to heightened anxiety, emotional fatigue, a reduced satisfaction, difficulty enjoying slower forms of connection. And honestly, I really, truly believe this is why so many people are on the apps for so long. I have been on the apps for 5 years, and let me tell you, I have gone into it heart wide open. I really have. I have not met one person, not one in 5 years, who actually wanted to get off the apps. That's sad. So why does this happen? It's not because we're weak, but because our brains are adaptable. Your brain doesn't ask, is this thing that I'm doing right now good for me? It asks, should I keep on doing this? And this is where real resilience can show up. So real world example again, for me, deleting the dating apps, it wasn't actually an emotional response. It wasn't reactive, which it has been in the past, I will say. But this time it was more of an embodied response. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. I was honestly tired. And I know for a fact that this was a healthy decision because the minute that I uninstalled those apps, deleted first my profiles, you have to do that, by the way. You can't just uninstall the app. You're still on there if you do that. Delete your profiles, uninstall the apps. And I realized, wow, I am feeling a lot better. I wasn't fully burned out, but I was tired. I wasn't fully hopeless, but I was starting to head that way. So I heard, in my own mind that the apps were not healthy for me, and I followed that. And honestly, this is resilience in action, because resilience isn't always super dramatic. Sometimes it looks like discernment. Sometimes it's realizing that something is consistently costing you more than it is giving you. That isn't quitting. That's regulation. So when the brain is constantly in this seeking mode, our ordinary lives can start to feel dull by comparison. This is why people will say things like, oh, I should really be grateful, but I just feel nothing, or I don't enjoy things that I used to. I feel disconnected. And that doesn't automatically mean depression. Now, caveat here, I want to be very, very, very clear. I am not diagnosing anybody. I am not saying who has depression and who doesn't. And if you feel that you may be going through depression, absolutely get medical attention, get a medical opinion. But what I'm talking about is when your reward system is overstimulated, which in my case, the dating apps were doing that for me. So resilience requires the ability to sit with stillness, tolerate uncertainty, find meaning in small, slower experiences. And those high dopamine habits can make that a lot harder. not in a permanent way, but enough to matter. So this episode isn't really about dating apps. It's really about anything that keeps us stuck. Anything that keeps us stuck in anticipation without true nourishment. So that could include things like social media, constant news consumption, productivity chasing, self-help overload, or always optimizing ourselves. Resilience isn't always built by adding in more tools. Sometimes it's built by removing the ones that dysregulate us. So letting go requires trust. Trust that calm does not mean emptiness. Trust that you don't need constant stimulation to be okay. You can trust that your body notices harm before your mind would want to name it. And resilience isn't about enduring everything. It's about choosing what you allow into your system. So I'm not asking you to change anything after this episode. I am just asking you to notice what habits are leaving you calmer. What habits are leaving you more tired? What feels nourishing to you? What feels activating but also kind of empty? Some things don't just blow up your life, they quietly drain it. And when something consistently costs you your peace, in those instances, letting go is absolutely not failure, it is wisdom. So thank you so much for joining me today. I will be back in a couple of weeks with another episode, and until next time, be well. That's a wrap on this episode of Diamonds and Dumpster Fires. If you're walking through the ashes right now, remember, you're not broken. You are becoming. Don't forget to subscribe, share with a friend who needs it, and come back next week for more faith, honesty, and a whole lot of heart. See you next time.